Thank you, first things first, for taking the time to do this. How are you? And are you having a good day so far?
Yeah, I'm good. Good day so far. Bit stressed from work, but that's work. Other than that, all good. I was semi tempted just to put the heating on, but I've resisted by taking a shower instead. But I don't know how much that is going to last for because it's getting colder.
It is the glorious UK. It's been a wet and miserable day, at least where I am. I'm in London, so we've had rain and miserable weather all day long. So it is kind of getting to that point. Yeah,
it seems to be today. It's taken a right dip. Sorry, I'm already bringing up the weather for your interview, but it's definitely, it got a bit nippy. Just my feet are a bit cold, but anyway.
Okay, well, hopefully then the rest of the night will go a bit better then, and you can kind of de-stress from work. Overall, though, how is everybody in the Barnum Meserve? Doing okay? Excited for the release of designs this coming Friday?
We're good. Yeah, we're excited considering it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And maybe other bands feel the same, but we almost finished recording this album a fair while ago, like several years ago now it would have been. Well, we started the writing process even further back, something ridiculous like, I don't know, I don't want to say 2018, 2019, we started writing for the album. So the intention was to release it maybe 2020. But then, of course, the global pandemic happened. I'm not sure if you're aware. So that has puts everything into perspective in the sense of prioritization, and it just wasn't going to be feasibly possible to do the things that we needed to do, namely make videos, do a couple of shows, do all the necessary things for an album release. It just wasn't going to be feasible doing it during that period. But the benefit of that did give us loads more time, and literally loads more time to continue mixing and mastering the album until we were totally happy with it. It was originally going to be a double album as well. This is the thing. It's a long album as it is. There's 14 tracks on the album. We actually wrote and recorded, God, I think it was like 27 songs or something like that, which we hadn't done previously. Our first album is very much us finding our feet in your own sound sense.
Yep.
And then the second album, we kind of learned from that and wanted to have a bit more of a direct focus. 10 songs, album just over 40 minutes. Very to the point. Yep. a bit more rock in a sense, and a bit more harder. But then the third one just became bigger and bigger as time in the practice rooms grew longer and longer, with us writing more and more and more. There was several, even outside of those 27, there was like easily 15 additional ideas of songs, like, oh, this is a good verse, maybe it can be something, but the chorus sucks, so let's not do anything with that, because we have plenty to pick from as is. So around that time, the intention, around 2020, the intention was, let's do a double album. Yeah. Who cares? We're not burdened with labels or anything like that. I mean, that's a good and a bad thing. So we can literally do what we want. And as much as people say, oh, well, you've got to make music a bit more digestible, and we're in the age of playlists and things like that, an album, or God forbid, concept album or something like that. Not that this album is a concept album at all, but it's much more of a conventional album. I kind of think like a conventional, like 90s alternative rock album, like something like Soundgarden would release, or Nine Inch Nails. I mean, Nine Inch Nails have got a bit more, they do a bit more concept-y type stuff. But then assessing, I'm giving you a really, really long answer, sorry, to a relatively simple question. Then we looked at it, and there's a thing you kind of learn I guess, if when you're in a band, of you have your tracks recorded, they can even just be the demos, like on your phone or something like that. And it's like you can ask yourself, there's a reason why you keep on going back to those songs, and you're listening back to specific songs, and you're not listening to others. It seems totally obvious in hindsight now, but then you can ask yourself, why am I going back to these 14, 15 or 11 tracks, and I'm not listening to these other ones, which at the time I thought they were really, really good, and I still do think they're good, but there's evidently something in that which you can then go, okay, these are actually stronger than the rest. Let's, instead of doing a double album, let's do a 14-track album, which is still pretty excessive in this day and age. And then we can decide what we want to do with it's not even less, it's kind of leftovers, but it's still all fully mixed and mastered and everything. They're not like B-sides or something like that, where, you know, there's like slight degradation in quality or something like that. They're all album worthy. They just didn't fit in with those 14 that we'd selected. So that's kind of when we decided to, right, let's do a 14-track album and then let's release it. Boom, pandemic happens, and you're like, well, we're not going to release that. We've got loads of other things that we need to do. We need to do videos. We need to work out artwork and stuff like that. So let's just wait and see what happens, because being in a band isn't really a priority at that time.
Yep.
Everyone was just kind of trying to stay sane in a sense.
But, you know, considering you've had to sit in it for such a long period of time, from the early stages, you said, to the writing, and then eventually to get to this point, when you're this close to release, does this reinvigorate your excitement for it? Because I'd imagine there's a certain level of, okay, I've heard this a lot, and musically we might have already moved on. But when we're this close, we're what? It's Monday, so we are four days away.
Yeah. I mean, my excitement is probably subdued somewhat from working all day and everything like that. I am very, very excited, primarily for just seeing what other people think and having other people hear it. As you mentioned, I've listened to it so many times, that all three of us have listened to it a load of times. So while we have or are in the process of moving on musically to whatever's next, with the band, it's more I can't wait for people to hear it, because I think it's the best stuff that we've done and the best sounding stuff. Everyone thinks that way when they're releasing an album. That is not lost on me, but I can hear the progression. Going back and listening to your earlier stuff, I can hear the progression of, like, production quality's just gone up each time, and everything sounds tighter, more concise. We've thought about it more relating to verses and choruses, and all the just songwriting's just got better. Leon's become better as a songwriter. We've come more tighter as a band, which you know, can only come from time, in a sense. So I'm incredibly excited, but excited and relieved in the sense of it's finally done, it's out. If people like it, fantastic. If people don't, that it is what it is. If people are indifferent, which is the kind of the difficulty these days with releasing new music for any kind of independent artist. So yeah, I'm just looking forward for it being out and hearing what people think. If they think it's fantastic, if they don't think it's fantastic, they wouldn't likely say anyway if they didn't think it was fantastic. But yeah.
I know the negative voices can often be the loudest, but at least it's some form of feedback. As you said, indifference maybe is the worst thing of all. I personally, so I want to tell you a little, very brief story into regards to this album from my perspective, because basically I think this is an incredible album, a really incredible album. I'm not being hyperbolic either. It left me mouth agape several times throughout, but I will get to those specific points in a bit and pick your brains about those. But before then, this came my way, as it often does. Can you check this out? Can you write a review for it? And it came at a bad time when we were basically fully blocked in, already filled up with exactly what we can do for this coming week. But I'm at work and I figured, hey, cool, I'm going to put this into the background, I'm going to let it play, and let's see if it grabs me, and then maybe I can come up with some words. That was kind of the thinking, and understand it that way. A couple of hours later, I'd probably listen to this album like 10 times over already, straight through. Absolutely in love with it. Couldn't believe it. It was an incredible experience. The next day I came home, said to my wife, you've got to listen to this album. You've got to hear these songs. You've got to hear these specific points as well. And it's a wonderful piece of work. I think you guys have absolutely done amazing here. And I believe that most people who hear it, who are a fan of this style of music, this style of post with cinematic value and so many elements, will absolutely adore it. But take me back to the early inception of the album and basically a vision. What was your vision for the record? Do you remember it, or was there really anything at all?
It's probably, sorry, that's a massive sigh. It's probably less vision, more experimentation, primarily from Leon being the key songwriter of the band. He's the one who is prolific in his musical ideas, in a sense. And we've always had an element of, well, since we first started the band, we've always had this cinematic, dramatic element kind of we always kind of play up on because we all like movie soundtracks. Yep. You could tell there's a bit of an influence in the music because it's quite dramatic, strings and brass and things like that. This time round, Leon had been experimenting with other sounds, in a sense, more arpeggiators, more electronic sounds, as well as just the usual strings and brass and everything like that. So from those ideas come some formation of songs, and so it's less, we never really have like a goal or a theme in mind. But the strange thing about it is, over time, it's almost like it comes into focus. You can kind of see, you can, especially with, as soon as you've got lyrics and things like that, you can see like a narrative theme throughout the songs, and or multiple themes as such. So it all slowly comes into focus. I don't necessarily know what the overarching idea is, though. I always kind of just think of it as a period in this band, and it's kind of like you have these milestones. I'm sure every band feels like that. You have, this is when we made this album and it sounds like this. And with us, it's always the progression thing of first album, quite ethereal, still quite rock, a little bit raw, alternative rock, a little bit raw, production wise and everything like that. Second album, more focused, production values go up. Third album, even more production values. And there's an element, not that we play to it, not that we would ever write to it, deciding we don't actually have to do, every track doesn't have to be heavy. Some can be softer and everything like that, because the reality is we like soft music, we like heavy music. With the between the three of us, we like a massive assortment, from soundtracks to Meshuggah. So, you know, there's a big dynamic there. But elements of those bands, like the heaviness of Meshuggah and the rumble and everything like that, as well as the bittersweet strings and things like that from strings and movie soundtracks and things like that. So I forgot what my point was now I was making. Yeah, there's no actual goal or idea that it sits behind it. It's mainly from progression of songwriting and experimentation and thinking, oh, we could do something a bit different here. Like some of our favorite albums, they're quite, like, I mentioned them before, like Nine Inch Nails and The Fragile. It's such a wide spectrum of sounds, or like soundscapes. You've got incredibly heavy stuff, and then you've got really, really soft stuff. I always really, really like the dynamics between those, especially we tried to do it in one of the tracks, one of the albums, where you end the track loud and then the next song is quiet. There's always it happens in Downward Spiral. where it goes from, I think it's called Big Man with a Gun or something like that, into A Warm Place or something like that. So it goes louder, 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 and then goes very, very quiet and starts off very quiet. And it's kind of like a refresh, like shocks your ears in a sense. So we take little bits of things that you just kind of absorb, love in music, and kind of think, oh, that would be good, and we could end the song like that. So yeah, it's never really like a goal. It's more of like a period of, this is what we were coming up with during that time, or this is, we built upon these ideas. Let's put some arpeggiators in here. Oh, how does that work with bass and drums? Or we can strip this out, and maybe it doesn't need to have pianos in this verse, and the pianos come in the chorus and stuff like that.
When you're doing that level of experimentation, what sort of things, if any, I guess, kind of forced you or caused you to head in unexpected or unplanned directions? Things that maybe you weren't used to, but you ended up making work for you?
So some of the things that were slightly different or not necessarily difficult to work around in the practice room, but doing, as mentioned, doing quieter songs in a practice room is different, because everyone's up to 11 and we're playing as loud as we bloody can, and rumbling the ground and things like that. So switching to slightly softer songs in the practice room, and some of the tracks needed very little, I don't want to say intervention, but Leon had already pretty much written the whole song, and it's been and done. Even tracks like, I mean, you wouldn't be able to think it, tracks like we released as a single, Gaslight. Gaslight doesn't have any real bass or real drums on it. It's all programmed, and there's a few like that. And even some of them started off as demos that weren't even going to be on the album. There's a track called Private Holiday, which I was adamant to put on the album because I thought it was just fantastic. And Leon had written the whole song, or 2/3 of the song. And how can we turn this, which already had programmed drums, and turn it into a live band thing? So that one's another one where actually in the song itself, it switches between real bass and programmed keyboard bass, and the same with drums as well. There's bits where you can't really tell the difference though, which I think is a good thing. So
if you hadn't mentioned, I would not have.
Yeah, I know, especially the Gaslight one. It's like there's literally no bass or no drums on that song. I don't think there is anyway. I'm pretty certain there isn't. So going back to it now, thinking about it, there were a fair few which Leon had already written the vast majority of the songs, and he'd played us some of the demos that he'd just done at home in the car on the way back from practice, and ones that we kind of like, this is really good, because it's like his writing is very much lots and lots and lots. Not everything's fantastic,
of course,
but within there's like a diamond. But it's knowing and understanding when that can be built upon. But I say that not like he needs us to tell us that. So yeah, the challenges were kind of like, it was a combination of using tracks that had already predominantly been demoed and kind of vast majority of parts recorded at home, and then in some instances converting it into the live practice room of kind of like, what should I play for this bit and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of describe some of the challenges and like that, because you've said it several times through, and I want to echo that as a person who's listened to it and loved it. It is an undeniably experimental album. Interesting, unique sounds combined with dramatic flair and post-rock brilliant. So many incredible ideas made feel very, very real, which was such an important aspect for me. Listening to the album, you make it seem so simple, so straightforward, so easy. Was it as easy as an experience as you make it seem?
Yes and no. The difficult part, the writing part comes naturally and easy, and especially with Leon's ideas, that comes easy. The mixing part gets difficult because there's so bloody much going on. And honestly, there's things that have been stripped out, and this is a credit to Johnny Carter and Andy Jones, who we recorded the album with, who we recorded the previous albums with as well as Paul Eden. Johnny very much has been, Johnny's like, what's the name of the guy for the Beatles? George Martin.
Oh, it does ring a bell. Wouldn't know for sure.
Yeah, he was kind of like the fifth. They called him the fifth Beatle.
Yeah.
And everything like that. Johnny's kind of like that with us, in the sense that he understands what we're going for. He needs to make sense of it sonically to not make it sound like a bloody jumble and everything's. And we've got lots of, this is the trouble when you've got bass guitar, but then you've got cellos going as well, where there's going to be there can be conflict of sonic frequencies there. So I'm probably getting into too much detail, but it's kind of the reality of it. And you listen back to it and you're like, something sounds weird there. Like something, is it my bass? Is my bass sounding weird? Am I like out of tune or something like that? And you kind of realize, let's solo out these things. It's like, well, I'm playing this, but this cello's going over there, and it's just making everything sound weird. So what we need to decide on that. And then you basically kind of almost in a sense do that with the whole sonic spectrum and kind of go, well, everything's got I say everything, but things sit in a place. So how can you avoid clashing, with the cymbals and everything like that? And then, but you've got high violins and other noises and things like going off. Is there like weird artifacts that are coming out in when you're listening back? So it's very much a credit to Johnny spending the time to which is the pandemic was really good for that, because he had even more time to mix and master and do multiple iterations of mixes as well. And us arguing about a bloody snare hit for 3 weeks when it doesn't really matter, which happens. I say argue, it was just, he wanted it one way, we thought, say we wanted it one way, we thought it was fine, it's just a snare hit. Like, let's move on. It really doesn't deserve us talking about that. But he was adamant that change it, so we just caved in the end because it just wasn't worth it. And it was because it's just a bloody snare hit. There's that was kind of almost like one of the, not difficulties, but the realization. Also, there's with us. You get people, maybe people take it for granted, but because we have so much strings and brass and things like that, it's all done on computer. So the strings and brass and stuff sound incredible. Yeah. Because we spend money on very good software, very good sampling and everything like that. Just having those things doesn't necessarily equate to like a fantastic song, though. You still have to have some musical ability behind it. What was I saying? Yeah, because we have so much of that going on. There's a lot of transferring files, bouncing down files and transferring them from one place to another place to get them over here so that you can mix them. So Johnny's used to doing that now. So like we spend usually a good day when we're in the studio merely just transporting all the sounds, the brass, the strings into Johnny's computer, so then we can start doing it, and then we can start thinking about drum tracking, bass tracking, and then vocals and stuff like that. So it's like a gradual build up of putting all these jigsaw pieces together until you have some semblance of a song, and then you can go, it's closer towards when you've have all those parts, then you can start experimenting more, which Johnny did in a few tracks. We're like, let's reverse this when it comes in for the final chorus. Let's do a reverse on the cymbal, the type thing, and then you try it and you're like, that sounds awesome, let's keep that. And then you can start playing around with things then, because you've got the song's fine, it's there, it's got middle, beginning, middle, and an end and everything like that. What else can you do with it, while also being conscious that you've got to work through 13 more songs and do all that. So yeah.
Would you say that the fact that you had this extra time because of the pandemic period to effectively be able to do a lot of this stuff, it's going to always stand out as probably a unique chapter in the Barnum Meserve's catalog, because ultimately, in theory, you will never and hopefully have the time the way you did.
Yeah, I mean, we're never massively quick to the mark with releasing something. But this is definitely the longest period. I think first album was released 2014, second album was released 2017. So then there's quite a jump from 2017 to 2022, but 2 years there. I kind of, looking back on it now, I kind of feel like we needed the extra time just to fit all the pieces together, to decide it's not going to be a double album. It's not going to be a bloody, I say double album, we even floated the idea of 3 EPs, splitting it into 3 EPs, because everyone has an opinion on how you should release it. And people will say, oh, people don't listen to albums these days, just release it as an EP or 2 tracks and then 2 tracks. And it's just like, I'm very much, and this is my own personal my own opinion, is I like to draw a line under that recording period, and there's no better way of doing that than going, this body of work is an album, and once it is done, as opposed to, oh, do 4 EPs or something like that. There's some benefits, by all means. A lot of people do that, and it's becoming more popular. I don't know generally why it's more. I think it's probably something to do with like metrics of engagement and all the business aspect of it and stuff like that, which I get and I understand, and I'm by no means disregarding, of
course,
this is a thing when you're in a band and everything like that, but I'm not gonna play up to them, and not necessarily play up to them. Integrity is the most important thing to me, being a musician and in a band. Integrity, how we decide how we share, display, associate our art. I know that sounds really, really highbrowed, doesn't it? But that's the most important thing to me. I want us to have the choice of these things, as opposed to people telling us, oh, you need to do it this way, or like the thing of someone, it happens with people who are on labels, I'm sure, independent artists, whether like, or you should drop that. Why don't you do the track to be just under 3 or 3.5 minutes? And it's like, the song doesn't need to be 3.5 minutes. If we want it to be 5 minutes, it's gonna be 5 minutes, and you like, nothing's gonna change because of that. Like, it's our decision. And then the other thing, this sounds incredibly pessimistic, but people giving their opinions on, oh, you should write it like that, and you kind of end up thinking, if you're so bloody good at songwriting, where's your album then, mush? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, where's your fantastic album then, if you think you're so good at this? I say that like we've experienced that a lot. We haven't. We have had run-ins with industry types who want to give their 2 cents, and they were absolutely a big learning curve for me personally, especially in the holding integrity as the key value of everything, and other things like commerce come afterwards.
It can be an incredibly hard-hitting experience just trying to exist in the industry, because as an independent band, that comes with its own pitfalls and stumbling blocks too.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it's difficult because, especially, it's like there's a counterbalance to all these things. Releasing your music on all the streaming platforms is fantastic that you can do that, and a lot of people can do that, but you're releasing it to lots of other music, and it sounds incredibly gatekeeper-y in a sense of kind of like, it's like, how does someone who appreciates good music find the good new artists and things like that? Things like playlists and stuff like that are obviously incredibly beneficial, but then how do you get on the playlists in the first place and things like that? Or how do you get on playlists that get enough exposure to get on that. The keyword exposure, that's the big thing, but it kind of is at the same time. And we've always very much been kind of on the outer edges of everything, never fully willing to commit to doing everything that we're led to believe. To be honest, that's one of the other thing of doing this for a long time is there doesn't seem to be a clear road in which to become a success, whatever that means to that individual. Like success could be just someone you bloody got your album on Spotify or something like that, which is fantastic. But someone else, it could be, I want to play main stage Reading Festival, or I want to play on the BBC introducing stage or on Glastonbury and stuff like that. So it's kind of, there's never there's never a clear path in which to follow. And lots of, you can attend seminars and read blogs, and people say you should do this, become more active in the social media domain, and you need this, and this. And some of these things will work and are beneficial, but it's almost like you don't necessarily need them. I say that we've got a Facebook, you know, if we didn't have to have a Facebook, I would get rid of it, but we seem to have a Facebook. Sorry, I've got my cat meowing at me now.
That's all right. I've got two kittens flowing around here as well somewhere. I was going to say, I get completely what you mean. Why spend 6 months trying to study and learn exactly what the algorithm for all social media / YouTube, Spotify and all that require? And then they change it, as they often do, completely. And again.
Totally. And it's, I think a lot of the things, it goes back to the integrity thing, a lot of the things that you are led to believe to do, you just kind of, some of it just makes me cringe, to be honest. Like we go back to, because we're all slightly old. I turned 40 this year. Mossy turned 39. Leon's turning 40 this year as well. We grew up in the late 80s and 90s. Of the bands that we loved, you barely knew naff all about them, or the only exposure you'd get to them. I grew up in a small town in Wales. The only exposure I'd get to like alternative, like grunge music and things like that was Krang, and or getting on a train for an hour to go to my local place to buy a CD shop. That sounds incredibly like, oh, I have to go travel 4 miles to get a loaf of bread or something like that. But that's what it was like. And now we're in an age where everyone is sharing everything constantly. And I just don't, I'm not interested in what like these bands I like that are eating for their dinner and things like that. I don't think I think it's just oversharing. It's the element of mystery I think I miss from before, where you'd see a photograph of Tool in Krang and you'd be like, oh, what's this about? What they look kind of, this guy's like got like a mohawk and shaved head, stuff like that. What's going on here? And stuff like that. Now with a lot of artists, they've got their Instagram, you can follow them every day and stuff like that. But it is what it is. It's these are the times we live in, and I'd be stupid not to disregard them. We've got an Instagram ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a choice in some regards. It's simple as that. You really have to play the game to some degree. But going back to the album then, for me, there are 2 tracks on the album that are simply the best pieces of music I've heard this year. So I want to focus on those. And I want to start with We Are Fighters. We Are Fighters was the first one that stopped me in my tracks. Talk to me about what you wanted to express with this. Well, it's a phenomenal track.
It's probably quite difficult because that should be Leon really explaining that track. But it's very, very nice to hear that is also one of my favorites, especially I think in the album, there's a few, it sounds cheesy, but I feel like there's a few like magical moments where it's the hairs on the neck type thing.
Yes. And
one of those, it's the going into the second verse of that track is like one of the best moments, I think, of the album, when everything comes in and the strings and everything comes in and it goes back into the verse. I just love that bit. So yeah, as to what it's about, I'm really sorry. Leon probably, I can't remember. It's his lyrics as well, actually, thinking about it. He's got so much better with his lyrics, like writing. And in that track is one of my favorite lyrics that he's written. I long for, it sounds really cheesy, I long for peace, but violence follows me.
Yeah.
I think it's just really, it's kind of poetic, don't you think? It reminds me of, there's a National album, which the album's called Trouble Will Find Me or something like that. So yeah, sorry, regarding what it's about though, I wouldn't be able to.
No, I mean, that's awesome. It's more, I always care more about how it makes you feel rather than necessarily the story, unless there is a specific story behind the track. And your enthusiasm for it there, the fact that you love it as well, is amazing. How about the other one then? The other one I'm going to bring out, and bear in mind, these are just two from a 14-track album that is filled wall to wall with absolutely bangers. But I want to highlight Drones as well, another exceptional track. Can you tell me anything about that, perhaps where the idea grew from and how you managed to turn it into something so captivating?
That again is definitely one of the tracks that had already been written by Leon, because it doesn't actually feature any bass or drums on it. Sorry, again, as to what it's about, I'm not entirely sure. I always compare that track to, I think it sounds quite Bon Iver, I don't know how you pronounce it, Bon Iver-ish.
Yeah.
With the melody lines and the kind of mannerisms in which he like shifts melody and things like that. So that one is really, really good. That's one of the tracks in which very much, let's put something softer in here, or Leon already has an idea of putting something softer in here, and it'll break up the track from going from quite a heavy one, or I say heavy, a loud one, to a quiet one, almost like this is the thing with sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
That's right.
The thing you've got to be conscious of with 14-track albums is, how do you keep someone sonically interested in sitting there and listening to it? So we went back and forth many a time regarding track listing. And I always find track listing really, really, really important. Like starting off strong and ending with a statement, in a sense, or kind of like a moment, in a sense. It could be, you could say end strong as well, but that's why I feel like one of the tracks that was, I say, leftovers, one of the other songs was actually going to be the opener, which is full. I wish I could. I'll have to share it to you at some point. It's full dramatic. It's like if you turned us to 11 on the cinematic scale, and it sounds like bloody something that would be more at home for Lord of the Rings, or like an Avengers movie, in a sense, because it's full. It's like 2.5 minutes, no singing, full, big, dramatic, kind of like, it sounds like a whole orchestra behind us, with like timbala, I think it's timbala drums and things like that. That was originally going to be the opening song, because it's such a banger of an opener and a big statement and everything like that, and it would kind of set the piece for the rest of the track. But it was a little bit too concepty, in the sense of it just kind of like, how do you follow that, in a sense? You go, because then the next track is going to be a conventional, I say conventional, it's going to be a 4-minute song with vocals coming in, and how do you go from this huge dramatic moment, incredibly cinematic, to something with just sounds like a normal conventional song, and everything like that. Sorry, I forgot what the question was.
I love the fact
it was probably like, sorry,
no,
carry on.
I was going to say, I just love I love listening to you talk. I love the fact that you will go off in these directions. It's absolutely fine. I enjoy this because I want it to seem like we are just talking in a pub, effectively. So by all means, don't worry about that. What I find, what I was thinking now, as you were talking about that cinematic introduction that you didn't include, and it kind of called back to what you said earlier on. So you have these leftover tracks, you have the stuff that didn't make what would have been the double album. Yet we also talked about the process of how you release music. Well, you know what the answer is now. Over the next 12 months, all these extra tracks, EPs, just EPs.
It probably, yeah, that's the thing we're thinking of, is we could just release that, because we don't necessarily need to do videos for it, and we work out with the guy who we work with, which is another, is the key people of releasing this album, other than ourselves, of course. Yeah. But Johnny and Andy for the recording, but Fraser West for all the, Fraser's very much captures visually. Fraser West did the videos as well as the artwork, as well as any promo photos and teasers and everything like that. We used Fraser since our second album, because he'd worked for a load of really cool bands, and I just on the off chance messaged him thinking he's not going to want to work with some small time Nottingham band, and he did, and then we've worked together since, because he's just incredibly easy to work with and he's incredibly talented. So anything he comes up with video wise or artwork wise is always like exactly how it wants to be envisaged. And consistency as well is the thing, where if you it's like, I want the artwork to be consistent with the videos and stuff like that. It's like a given. It seems like obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, again, I forgot what the original question was, because I just keep on going off on a tangent and then talking about, oh, Johnny recorded and Fraser did the videos.
Ultimately, I think what you're saying and what you're getting across, ultimately it is a team effort. While ultimately the three of you is the more important aspect, the most what you're creating and putting out there when it comes to the video work, comes to the artwork, when it comes to simple things as promotion, as much as trying to get your name out there as much as possible. Everybody's got to pull in the same direction. And I feel like looking in from the outside, that's very much the case as we roll on to the Friday. And I'm going to wrap this up then with just basically the last question, which is really, what does the rest of 2022 look like for the Barnum Meserve? But also, what's a realistic goal that perhaps you think, you'd like to achieve for 2023?
I think the rest of 2022, a few more shows, and then inevitable wind down for the year, because before we know it, it's going to be Christmas. Yeah, and it'll just literally go like that, because my God, years are going quickly these days. I don't know whether that's just getting older, but it seems to be the case. Yeah. And then 2023, it would be start writing for album. I was going to say album 3 then. This is album 3. Album 4. Actually, we decide what we want to do with these other tracks, which will likely be released as an EP or something like that. And then while that's all happening, start writing. Leon's got a few more ideas. He wants to bring, Leon originally was a guitarist, or is a guitarist as well as playing piano. We want to bring some guitar back into the band. How that will sound is kind of to be determined in the sense, because there's lots of influences. We've talked about, like, how do you bring a guitar back into a band, like things like Thrice and Grizzly Bears. We all really like, with Grizzly Bears, one of the only bands we've actually seen together as the three of us.
Okay.
It's easily one of the best gigs I've been to. They were phenomenal, and they're such a great band. I say underrated, they are popular, but they're just a fantastic band, and they just make music that they want to make. So 2023 will be starting to write album 4, and then regarding goals, just the usual things of trying to get more, it sounds cheesy, but trying to get more exposure and just getting people listening to us, because we think what we're doing is original, and we've never followed any trends, and we've never been part of any scenes, definitely never been part of any scenes, and things like that. We just make the music we want to make. So it could be, you know, we could just be doing this forever. We always joke that we're like, someone's going to make a documentary about us one day, and we're going to. Have you seen Anvil?
Yeah.
We're going to be like Anvil. I think we've all convinced ourselves we're going to be like Anvil. One day someone will be like, oh, actually, these guys are really good. And then by that time, we're all in our 50s, which probably isn't that far away. So yeah, just continue to try and work out getting more people to hear us. But with that, it's kind of, it's not like you those lofty goals or dreams you have when you're younger, like, oh, I want to play on main stage, Glastonbury and things like that.
Yeah,
we still want to do those things, but
of course,
it's almost kind of like we realized, don't set yourself up for disappointment, and I've very much learned to become content with what you're doing. Make the best songs that you can make fantastic videos, make fantastic artwork that you're proud of. And if people like it, fantastic. If they don't, then they don't, type thing. What's the point in spending all that time just worrying about, are we getting too old? Should we change our appearance? Is that why no one likes us? Is our appearance type thing? Are we not active enough on stage? Is that a problem? And trying to find problems where there are no problems, because you could just drive yourself crazy for them going, well, we're past it now because people are only interested in younger generation bands now and everything like that. They shouldn't really, these things shouldn't like come into people's minds. You should just be making music for the sake of making music, because at the end of the day, again, quite cheesy point, you're making music because you're wanting to express yourself, and it's the only channel in which you can express these feelings you have. So that should be the key thing. All these other periphery things like becoming a success, or the idea of making it into a living, which is just a mystery of like, how do you be in a band these days and make it, especially now coming out the other end of the pandemic, how do you make a living out of it? And things like that. Even stuff like we've explored, or always exploring, synchronization work, because our songs are quite cinematic and things like that. Is there an opportunity for them? We have all our stuff with a music publisher and things like that to try and get us work. We almost had a very, very close one, which would have earned us a lot of money, but it didn't fall through. But I'm thinking something like that could come up in the future, especially now with this album sounding even more dramatic and more cinematic.
Yeah.
Also having quieter elements to it. I'm like, these could be used in adverts and things like that. And we're not, I'm like contradicting myself now. It's like integrity. Wouldn't use our songs on adverts. We would, if it generates money that we can then put back into the band and buy better software, record more, spend time more in the studio. It's like a no-brainer. Or at the end of the day, all we really, really want is for people to hear the songs.
Yeah.
That's all we want.
And more people would hear it that way.
Yeah, and more people would hear it that way, as opposed to just going, this is a path to success. It's like, here's a path which actually could generate some revenue, actual revenue, because we're never going to make money off streaming sites, let's face it. And merch, you got to play a load of gigs with, and we kind of don't really have the time because of life commitments to play shed loads of gigs. There's also the admin aspect of playing gigs as well, and none of us can be asked to go backwards and forwards with emails. Continuing exploring some of those other opportunities as well. Maybe there's something else in it there. Like, I've thought about chatting to Leon. Leon should put some of his work as like composition work, and maybe write some separate stuff that is specifically for TV or film. And if that can generate some money that we can then put back into the band, buy some better equipment and everything like that. Well, our equipment's fine at the moment, and we've even streamlined everything down. really, really well. But you can always, releasing an album these days costs money.
Of course.
At the end of the day.
And tech moves forward quite quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you've always got to be conscious of these things, especially that's actually the other thing about not releasing in 22 is fully working out how many videos do we need and what's the budgeting going to look like. It's all very, very boring, but it's a realistic thing that needs to happen, that I usually have to deal with. But it is what it is.
It is what it is. Incredible words there. And I think your head's really screwed on right for what needs to happen going forward, at least in a realistic sense more than anything else. For people watching this, listening to this, Roleplay, Gaslight, go check those out right now. You can watch the videos, you can listen to those tracks. But Designs is out this Friday, 30th of September, 2022. And take my word for it, as a person listening to it, it is one of the best things you will hear this year. There we go. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
No worries. It's been a pleasure. And sorry if I've gone on a tangent quite a lot.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?